Beloved soul, pause for a moment. Do not scroll away from this message too quickly. There are certain moments in life when heaven interrupts the ordinary flow of your day, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with a quiet whisper that carries an unsettling truth. This is one of those moments. Something hidden around your life is beginning to move toward the surface. For a long time it remained buried beneath smiles, polite words, and familiar faces. But heaven does not allow deception to remain hidden forever. There comes a moment when what was concealed must finally breathe in the open air of truth. And the reason you are hearing these words right now is not random. There is a timing to revelation, a divine rhythm that unfolds when the moment is finally right. You may have felt it recently without fully understanding it. That strange tension in the atmosphere around you. Conversations that suddenly felt slightly different. Certain glances that lingered a little longer than normal. The uncomfortable sense that something was happening behind the scenes of your life, something your natural eyes could not fully identify. Many people dismiss these feelings as imagination. But the spirit within you recognized something your mind could not yet explain. The quiet alert inside your heart was not paranoia. It was discernment slowly waking up. Understand this clearly, beloved soul. Heaven often warns its chosen ones long before the full picture becomes visible. There are seasons when you sense resistance, but you cannot yet see the source. Doors close without explanation. Certain relationships begin to shift in subtle ways. Words spoken around you carry an unusual edge beneath their surface. And while others may not notice anything unusual, your spirit feels the change in the air. This is because the life placed inside you carries purpose. And purpose attracts attention. Not all attention is celebration. Some of it is observation. Some of it is curiosity. And sometimes, it becomes quiet opposition. You may remember moments when someone around you seemed supportive on the surface, yet something about their energy felt slightly misaligned. Their smile appeared genuine, but something in your spirit hesitated. Their words sounded encouraging, yet your inner voice whispered caution. At the time you may have ignored that feeling because you did not want to assume the worst about someone. That kindness in your heart is not weakness. It is evidence of the compassion heaven placed inside you. But compassion does not cancel discernment. And the reason this message has reached you now is because a hidden pattern around your life is slowly becoming visible. The truth is that not every battle arrives with loud confrontation. Some conflicts move quietly, almost invisibly, behind everyday interactions. They disguise themselves through politeness, through casual conversations, through subtle remarks that appear harmless to others but carry a different meaning when directed toward you. This kind of opposition rarely reveals itself immediately. It studies. It observes. It waits. There has been someone watching your path more closely than you realized. Not in the open. Not with obvious hostility. But with careful attention. They noticed your growth. They noticed your resilience. They noticed that even after difficult seasons you continued moving forward while others remained stuck. And something about that unsettled them in ways they did not fully understand themselves. The truth is that when a life carries quiet favor, it creates a reaction in people who have unresolved insecurity. Your progress becomes a mirror reflecting what they feel they have not achieved. Your peace becomes uncomfortable to those who carry hidden unrest. And sometimes that discomfort transforms into something darker than simple jealousy. It becomes quiet strategy. Beloved soul, there were moments when conversations about you took place in rooms where you were not present. Moments when small narratives about your character began forming without your knowledge. Words were chosen carefully, not to appear openly hostile, but just enough to plant subtle doubt in the minds of others. A small suggestion here. A questioning tone there. Nothing loud enough to expose the intention, but enough to influence perception. You may never have seen those conversations happen. But heaven did. There were moments when you wondered why certain people suddenly treated you differently without explanation. Moments when opportunities shifted in unexpected ways. Moments when someone's behavior toward you changed almost overnight. Those moments were not random disturbances in your life. They were small ripples created by something happening quietly beneath the surface. Yet here is the truth that should bring peace to your spirit: nothing hidden escapes the awareness of heaven. Even when deception operates in silence, it is never invisible to the one who sees every intention of the human heart. Long before any plan could grow strong enough to truly harm your path, heaven began observing the motives behind it. What appeared subtle to others was never subtle to God. There is an ancient wisdom written in sacred scripture that reveals this principle clearly. In Luke 8:17, it is written that nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor anything secret that will not be known and come to light. This is not simply poetic language. It is a spiritual law. Secrets built on deception cannot remain buried forever. Time itself becomes the instrument that brings them into the open. And another passage echoes the same truth in Numbers 32:23, which warns that your sin will find you out. Not through revenge. Not through human exposure alone. But through the quiet unfolding of consequences that truth inevitably brings. For a long time the situation around you remained unclear. You sensed something but could not confirm it. And because you chose peace over suspicion, you continued moving forward without trying to investigate every strange feeling. In many ways, that decision protected your heart. But while you focused on healing, growth, and progress, heaven was quietly collecting the full story. And now the season of silence around this situation is beginning to change. Because something about the person who attempted to work against you has already begun shifting behind the scenes. Small cracks are appearing in the image they carefully maintained. Subtle inconsistencies are beginning to surface. And people who once believed their narrative are starting to notice details that no longer align with the story they were told. But what heaven revealed about this person will make everything you went through suddenly make sense. Beloved soul, now that the silence around this situation has begun to shift, something important must be understood. The opposition that formed around your life did not begin with a loud confrontation. It began quietly, almost invisibly, through small observations that slowly turned into hidden resentment. The person who began working against you did not suddenly wake up one day with open hostility. Instead, their reaction toward you grew gradually as they watched your life unfold. At first, they simply noticed you. They noticed the way people naturally gravitated toward your presence. They noticed how your words carried weight even when you were not trying to impress anyone. They noticed that when challenges appeared in your life, you did not collapse the way many others did. Instead, you adapted. You learned. You moved forward. For someone who carries unresolved insecurity, watching another person grow in quiet strength can create an internal conflict they struggle to process. Instead of celebrating what they see, they begin comparing it to their own situation. And comparison is a dangerous seed when it grows inside a heart that has not learned contentment. At some point, that comparison turned into something else. Jealousy rarely announces itself openly. It disguises itself as curiosity, as concern, sometimes even as friendship. But behind that mask, a subtle resistance begins forming. They start paying closer attention to your life than they should. They study your decisions. They listen carefully to the way others speak about you. And gradually, they begin creating a quiet narrative in their own mind. In that narrative, your success must have an explanation. Your peace must have a hidden advantage. Your resilience must come from something unfair. Because if they accepted the truth, that your strength comes from discipline, faith, and character, they would have to confront the areas of their own life they have avoided addressing. So instead, a different story begins forming. Beloved soul, this is how hidden opposition often begins. Not with hatred, but with wounded pride. Not with confrontation, but with silent comparison that slowly turns admiration into resentment. The person who began working quietly against you convinced themselves that your path somehow threatened their own identity. And once that belief settled in their heart, their behavior toward you began changing in ways that were difficult to notice at first. They did not attack you directly. Instead, they moved carefully through suggestion. A comment here. A subtle question there. A small remark planted in the ear of someone who trusted them. Nothing dramatic enough to reveal their true motive. Just enough influence to shift perception slowly over time. This kind of manipulation works best when it appears casual. When it sounds like concern rather than accusation. When it hides behind phrases like, "I might be wrong, but," or "Have you ever noticed?" And little by little, the atmosphere around your name began changing in certain circles. But here is the part they did not fully understand: the resistance they felt toward you was not only emotional. It was spiritual. Because your life carries something they could sense even if they could not explain it. There is a presence around individuals who walk with divine purpose. It is difficult to describe, but it becomes noticeable over time. It is the quiet authority of someone who has endured hardship without becoming bitter. The calm confidence of someone who knows their path does not depend on human approval. The steady peace that remains even when circumstances become uncertain. This kind of presence disturbs people who live by comparison and control. And that disturbance often turns into resistance. Beloved soul, the reason you became a target was not because you did something wrong. In many cases, you simply existed in the same space while carrying a level of purpose that unsettled someone who had not made peace with their own life. There is a pattern like this throughout sacred history. Consider the story of Joseph, whose brothers turned against him not because he harmed them, but because they saw something in his future that stirred jealousy within their hearts. The ancient text reveals in Genesis 37 verse 11 that his brothers were jealous of him while their father quietly observed the unfolding situation. Joseph did not create their jealousy. His destiny exposed it. The same pattern appears again in Psalm 41 verse 9, where the scripture describes betrayal coming from someone trusted. Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted his heel against me. This passage reveals something painful but deeply real about human relationships. Sometimes betrayal comes not from strangers, but from those who had the closest access to our lives. And yet another example appears in Ecclesiastes 4 verse 4, which explains that much human effort and achievement becomes the target of envy from others. In other words, progress itself often provokes resistance. Beloved soul, these patterns exist because purpose carries visibility. Even when you are not seeking attention, the direction of your life begins drawing attention naturally. People notice the consistency of your character. They notice the resilience of your spirit. They notice the quiet favor that seems to accompany your path. Most people celebrate that. But a small number react differently. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel threatened. Instead of feeling motivated, they feel exposed. And when that internal discomfort becomes strong enough, some individuals begin trying to reduce the influence of the person who triggered it. This is the quiet resistance that formed around your life. But here is the psychological truth that may help you understand the situation more clearly. The person who opposed you was never truly fighting you. They were fighting the reflection they saw when they looked at your life. Your discipline reminded them of their procrastination. Your faith reminded them of their doubt. Your courage reminded them of the risks they were too afraid to take. And rather than confronting those uncomfortable reflections within themselves, they attempted to adjust the image they presented to others about you. It was easier to question your integrity than to examine their own insecurity. Yet while these quiet strategies were unfolding behind the scenes, something far greater was already at work. Heaven was not unaware of what was happening. Every conversation, every subtle remark, every carefully planted narrative was seen clearly by the one who observes the intentions of every heart. And because your path is connected to something larger than human approval, the situation could never remain hidden forever. There comes a moment when divine timing begins shifting the environment around a hidden conflict. Small details start surfacing unexpectedly. Inconsistencies appear in the stories people once believed. And those who quietly participated in the narrative begin noticing that something does not feel entirely truthful anymore. This is how exposure often begins. Not through sudden confrontation, but through the gradual collapse of a carefully constructed illusion. Beloved soul, the season you are entering is not about revenge. It is about revelation. It is about truth slowly moving into the light where it can no longer be controlled by secrecy. And when heaven showed the true reason they targeted you, it revealed something even more dangerous. Beloved soul, when heaven began revealing the deeper truth behind what has been happening around your life, it did not arrive as a single answer. It came as a sequence of insights, layers of understanding that slowly uncovered the real story behind the resistance you have felt. These revelations were not meant to create fear within you. They were meant to bring clarity. Because once clarity arrives, confusion loses its power. The first revelation heaven uncovered is this. The person who quietly opposed you has been far more aware of your future than you realized. While you were simply trying to live faithfully and move forward one step at a time, they were studying the direction of your life. They noticed your potential long before many others did. They saw the way people naturally trusted your voice. They saw the doors that began opening around your path. And deep inside their thoughts, a quiet fear began forming. Not fear of who you are today. Fear of who you are becoming. Some people can sense destiny before it fully manifests. But instead of celebrating that destiny, they react to it with anxiety. Because they understand something you may not have realized yet, when your calling fully unfolds, the influence of your life will expand far beyond what it is right now. Your voice will carry further. Your presence will reach more people. Your purpose will begin affecting environments you have not even entered yet. And the person who worked against you sensed this shift coming long before it arrived. In their mind, stopping you early felt easier than watching you rise later. That is why the resistance appeared during seasons when you were still growing, still learning, still finding your direction. They believed those early stages were the only opportunity to quietly disrupt your path. But that belief leads directly to the second revelation heaven exposed. The plans they carefully arranged against you have already begun collapsing. Not dramatically. Not with loud announcements. But quietly, in the same silent way they attempted to work against you. The narratives they tried to build around your name are slowly losing their strength. People who once listened without questioning are beginning to reconsider what they heard. Details that once seemed convincing no longer feel entirely true. And the reason for this shift is simple. Truth carries a stability that deception cannot imitate forever. A lie requires constant maintenance. It must be repeated, adjusted, protected. But truth does not require effort to survive. It simply waits. Over time, the weight of reality begins pressing against every false version of the story until cracks begin to appear. Beloved soul, those cracks are already forming. Conversations are changing tone. Certain individuals who once kept their distance are beginning to observe more carefully. And the person who tried to control the narrative about you is slowly realizing that the story is no longer entirely in their hands. This leads to the third revelation. The exposure of this situation is not accidental. It is part of a season heaven allowed to unfold. There are moments in life when divine wisdom permits hidden opposition to reveal itself gradually. Not because heaven supports betrayal, but because exposure teaches discernment. Without moments like this, many people would continue trusting individuals who quietly undermine their progress. In Proverbs 26 verse 26, ancient wisdom explains that though hatred may be concealed by deception, its wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. In other words, hidden intentions eventually reveal themselves in ways that no amount of secrecy can permanently prevent. You were allowed to experience this situation not as punishment, but as preparation. Preparation to recognize patterns you might have overlooked before. Preparation to understand that not every smile reflects loyalty. Preparation to strengthen the discernment that will protect the larger purpose ahead of you. Because the path you are walking will eventually place you in environments where influence carries real weight. And influence requires wisdom about human character. Beloved soul, the lessons unfolding around you right now are sharpening that wisdom. But the fourth revelation may surprise you even more. The person who attempted to work quietly against you is beginning to notice something they did not expect. The same people they hoped would question your integrity are slowly beginning to question theirs. At first, the shift was subtle. Someone noticed an inconsistency in the story. Another person remembered an interaction with you that did not match the narrative they were told. A third individual began observing patterns in the behavior of the person spreading the quiet doubts. And slowly, almost invisibly, perception began changing. This is one of the quiet ways truth moves through a community. It rarely arrives as a public announcement. Instead, it travels through realization. One person notices something unusual. Then another. Then another. Until eventually the original narrative begins losing credibility. The person who tried to control the story about you is starting to sense this shift. They feel it in the way certain conversations pause when they enter the room. They feel it when someone asks a question they cannot easily answer. They feel it in the uncomfortable silence that sometimes follows their remarks. And deep inside their thoughts, a realization has begun forming. The situation they tried to manage quietly is no longer fully under their control. Beloved soul, heaven does not rush exposure, but it never abandons truth either. When the time is right, what was hidden begins surfacing through the smallest details. A misplaced word. A forgotten contradiction. An unexpected witness. Piece by piece, the illusion loses its strength. And while all of this unfolds, you may have noticed something interesting about your own life. Despite the resistance you faced, you continued moving forward. You did not collapse. You did not lose your direction. You did not allow bitterness to define your spirit. Instead, you grew stronger in ways the person opposing you never predicted. And that growth is about to play an important role in what happens next. Because the fifth revelation is the one your enemy never expected heaven to expose. Beloved soul, the fifth revelation that heaven uncovered about this situation is one the person who opposed you hoped would never come into the light. Because beneath every quiet strategy, beneath every subtle remark and carefully planted doubt, there was a deeper motive that even they tried to hide from themselves. The hidden truth about their motive was never truly about you. On the surface, it may have appeared that they were reacting to something you said, something you did, or some moment of disagreement between you. But heaven revealed that the real source of their behavior existed long before you ever crossed paths with them. There were insecurities within their heart that had been growing quietly for years, unresolved disappointments, comparisons they could not escape, dreams they believed had slipped beyond their reach. And when your life began moving in a direction that reflected growth, resilience, and quiet favor, it stirred something inside them they did not know how to process. Your progress reminded them of their stagnation. Your courage reminded them of their hesitation. Your faith reminded them of their uncertainty. Instead of confronting those reflections within themselves, they projected the discomfort outward. In their mind, if they could influence how others perceived you, they could reduce the weight of what they felt when they compared their life to yours. But heaven does not judge a situation only by appearances. It sees motives. There is a wisdom written in Jeremiah 17 verse 10, where it is declared that the Lord searches the heart and examines the mind to reveal the truth behind every intention. While human eyes often see only actions, heaven always sees the deeper reason behind them. And that is why the sixth revelation carries so much peace for your spirit. Throughout every moment of hidden opposition, there has been divine protection quietly surrounding your life. Even when you were unaware of the conversations happening behind your back, protection was present. Even when narratives were forming that you could not defend yourself against, protection was present. Even when you wondered why certain situations shifted in ways you could not explain, protection was present. The person who opposed you believed they were operating unnoticed. But heaven had already placed limits around what their actions could truly accomplish. In Isaiah 54:17, an ancient promise declares that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Notice the language carefully. It does not say weapons will never be formed. It says they will not succeed in the purpose they were intended to accomplish. Beloved soul, some attempts were indeed made against your reputation, your peace, and your path. But the outcome they hoped for was never granted the authority to succeed. What they intended as disruption became preparation. What they intended as discouragement became strength. And what they hoped would weaken your path only sharpened the wisdom that will guide your future. Now the seventh revelation is already beginning to unfold quietly around them. The reputation they tried to influence regarding your life is slowly beginning to unravel around their own. Again, not with loud confrontation, but with subtle realization. People who once trusted their words without hesitation are beginning to observe their behavior more carefully. Patterns that were once ignored are becoming easier to recognize. Someone notices that the stories they share change slightly each time they are told. Another person recalls moments when their comments about others carried the same tone of subtle criticism. A third individual begins realizing that the uneasiness they once felt around certain conversations now makes sense. Beloved soul, reputation is built on consistency. When a person repeatedly reveals small signs of hidden motives, eventually those patterns become visible to those who are paying attention. The individual who tried to quietly shape how others saw you is now beginning to experience something deeply uncomfortable. People are beginning to see them more clearly. And the realization forming around them is something they cannot easily control. Because once perception begins shifting, it rarely returns to the way it once was. This leads directly to the eighth revelation, the moment of exposure that has been quietly approaching. Heaven does not rush these moments, because true exposure must arrive with undeniable clarity. When truth finally surfaces, it must carry enough evidence that it cannot easily be dismissed or explained away. And that moment is closer than you may realize. Somewhere in the unfolding days ahead, a conversation will occur, a detail will surface, or a pattern will become visible in such a way that the narrative surrounding you will finally be questioned openly. It may happen through an unexpected witness. It may happen through a contradiction they cannot explain. Or it may happen through the quiet realization of someone who has been observing everything more closely than anyone realized. But when that moment arrives, the carefully protected image they tried to maintain will begin losing its strength. And the truth about what truly happened around your life will begin moving into the open. Beloved soul, when that shift occurs, something important must happen inside your own heart. You must understand that you are no longer the person who once felt confused and wounded by what was happening behind the scenes. You have changed. What once felt like betrayal has become insight. What once felt like confusion has become discernment. What once felt like vulnerability has become spiritual awareness. This is the transformation heaven has been shaping within you. You are no longer standing in the position of a victim trying to understand why someone worked against you. You are standing as someone who has grown wiser, stronger, and far more aware of how human character truly reveals itself over time. This experience has upgraded something within your spirit. You now recognize subtle patterns that once would have passed unnoticed. You understand the difference between kindness and manipulation. You can sense the difference between encouragement and hidden comparison. This is the beginning of a deeper spiritual authority forming inside you. But with that authority comes wisdom about boundaries. Beloved soul, moving forward does not require you to become suspicious of everyone. But it does require you to observe patterns more carefully. Trust should be given with awareness, not simply with assumption. Pay attention to how people respond to your growth. Notice how they speak about others when those people are not present. Watch how they behave when someone else receives recognition or opportunity. Character always reveals itself through patterns over time. And the discernment you have gained through this experience will protect the path ahead of you far more than blind trust ever could. You are entering a season where wisdom and purpose will walk side by side in your life. The lessons you have learned here will guard the future influence that is still unfolding around your calling. Because the moment heaven decides the truth must surface, no human power can keep it hidden. Beloved soul, when the moment of truth finally begins to surface, something remarkable often happens. What once felt confusing suddenly becomes clear. Conversations that once seemed mysterious begin to make sense. And people who once remained silent begin seeing the situation through a different lens. This is the beginning of what can only be described as a quiet elevation. Not the kind that comes through loud announcements or dramatic confrontations, but the kind that happens when truth naturally restores what deception tried to distort. As the real story begins revealing itself, the narrative that once surrounded your name begins to change. People who may have quietly doubted you start realizing that the version of events they heard was incomplete. And slowly, the weight of truth begins lifting your reputation back into the place it always belonged. Beloved soul, elevation in moments like this is not about pride. It is about restoration. It is about the correction of perception that occurs when truth finally has room to breathe. Those who once observed the situation from a distance begin recognizing the integrity that remained consistent in your life even when you were misunderstood. And in that moment, something shifts. The person who attempted to influence how others viewed you finds their credibility weakening. Not because anyone is seeking revenge, but because the story they constructed can no longer hold its shape under the light of reality. When people begin comparing their claims with your consistent character, the contrast becomes difficult to ignore. Truth has a quiet power like that. It does not need to shout. It does not need to defend itself endlessly. It simply stands steady until the illusions around it fall away. And this leads to the deeper spiritual meaning behind everything you have experienced. There is a moment in every hidden conflict where heaven delivers its verdict. Not through anger. Not through punishment designed to humiliate someone. But through the simple unfolding of justice. Divine justice rarely operates the way human revenge does. It does not rush. It does not react emotionally. Instead, it allows time, truth, and consequence to reveal what was hidden in the hearts of those involved. The sacred writings remind us of this principle in Ecclesiastes 12:14, which declares that God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil. This passage reminds us that nothing in human behavior remains permanently concealed from divine awareness. And another ancient truth echoes the same promise in Luke 12 verse 2, where it is written that there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. Beloved soul, these words are not threats. They are assurances that truth will always find its way into the light. What you experienced was not ignored by heaven. Every moment of quiet betrayal, every whisper spoken in rooms where you were absent, every attempt to influence perception about your life was seen clearly from the beginning. But instead of reacting immediately, heaven allowed time to reveal the character of everyone involved. And now that revelation is beginning to unfold. Yet the most important transformation has not happened around the person who opposed you. It has happened within you. Because the trials you walked through have elevated your spiritual awareness to a new level. You now carry a deeper understanding of discernment. You recognize that influence must be guarded with wisdom. You have learned that loyalty is not measured by words alone, but by consistent action over time. This is the beginning of a new spiritual rank forming within your life. Not a rank defined by titles or recognition, but by maturity of spirit. You have moved beyond the stage where every opinion about you determines your peace. You have stepped into a level of confidence that comes from knowing your identity is rooted in something far deeper than human approval. Beloved soul, when someone reaches this level of spiritual clarity, their life begins affecting environments in ways they may not even realize. Your calm presence begins bringing stability into spaces filled with confusion. Your discernment begins protecting you from situations that once might have wounded your heart. This is what spiritual authority looks like in everyday life. It is the quiet confidence of someone who has learned that truth does not need constant defense. It is the steady peace of someone who understands that divine timing always reveals what must be revealed. And now, before this message comes to its close, allow these words to settle over your spirit like a declaration. May every hidden narrative that was formed against your life lose its power under the light of truth. May every whisper that attempted to distort your character be replaced by clarity and understanding. May the wisdom you gain through this experience guide every step of your future path. May your heart remain free from bitterness, because bitterness would only chain you to the very situation heaven has already begun resolving. Instead, may peace fill your spirit with the quiet assurance that justice does not require your effort to exist. Heaven has already seen everything. And as the days unfold, the truth surrounding your life will continue revealing itself in ways that restore what was misunderstood and strengthen the purpose placed within you. Beloved soul, if this message resonated with your spirit and confirmed something you have been sensing deep within your heart, take a quiet moment to acknowledge it. Sometimes the simple act of recognizing truth helps seal the peace that follows revelation. If this message spoke to your spirit, you may gently acknowledge it below so that others walking through similar seasons can also find clarity and encouragement. But more importantly, carry this understanding with you as you move forward. Because the story of your life was never controlled by those who try to work against you. It has always been guided by the one who sees everything. And when heaven decides the truth must rise, no shadow of deception can stop the light from revealing it.